With a bit of breaking news out of the state of Idaho, and it is concerning the man that is accused of killing those 4 University of Idaho students. Court documents reveal that Bryan Kohberger will be appearing in court next Monday at noon Eastern Time in Latah County, Idaho, after a grand jury has apparently indicted him. He faces 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary in the November stabbing deaths of Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapman. Now, when Kohberger appears in court on Monday, this will be an arraignment now, and he'll enter his plea, and then that means this will go to a jury trial, assuming he pleads not guilty. This is a grand jury indictment, meaning there's no need for that June preliminary hearing that was scheduled. In fact, they had set out a week in June for this preliminary hearing. You can indict people one of 2 ways, either through a grand jury or through a preliminary hearing in the state of Idaho. And now prosecutors can totally skip that preliminary hearing process altogether because he has been indicted by a grand jury, according to our Chanley Painter, who has spoken to the lawyer representing the Gonzalez family, and the family will be there. Katie Gonzalez's family will be there for this arraignment on Monday in Idaho. So let's talk about it. Joining us now this hour is Melissa Pinkleton. She is a retired officer with the Nashville Police Department. And Melissa, this preliminary hearing was set. It was set months ago, and they put a week out, meaning this was going to be an extensive hearing where the state was going to basically show their cards to some extent. Now, they wouldn't have brought all of the witnesses on. It wouldn't have been a full trial, but it's a mini trial. And that is done for different reasons in terms of strategy wise. But now we're not going to hear anything real because they have decided to go grand jury route. That is not a public venue. Thoughts on this decision not to come out and give the public, but more importantly, the defense, kind of a little look at this trial strategy, and it's kind of a dry run on some levels. Your thoughts on why they would go this route?
I think it's a really smart decision that they are not doing this that way, and they're going to the grand jury, which will be sealed. And that probably is because there is so much overwhelming information. They don't want to have the claim that the jury pool is tainted by putting so much out there as public. This is a highly, highly public case. There are a lot of details that are out there in the public, but 2,000 different pieces of information have just been handed over as discovery. It's my understanding that's breaking. And so this might be the better route for prosecution so that defense can't go, hey, we're not going to get a fair trial because all of this is out there. So, and I do believe you're going to get an indictment from the grand jury because what do they say? You can indict a ham sandwich in a grand jury. So yeah. I don't think that's going to be a problem. But I think this is a smart strategy on the prosecution part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that has already taken place. This is a way to avoid that scrutiny, but also, to your point, the potential jury pool pollution, and which can be used for different reasons. You can get a change of venue out of it, or you can also use it at the end of the day as a reason to appeal, saying that everybody had seen everything. Because let's face it, anything that comes out about this case, that comes out about this suspect, any little tidbit, people are just absorbing. There are so many questions, and this was such a heartbreaking case. Kaylee Gonzalez's father, Steve Gonzalez, told ABC News, quote, "I can't wait to see the evidence, and then I'm going to bring it. And he's going to realize that this is the family that's going to make sure he doesn't get away with it." He has been, of all of the parents and loved ones, he's the one that has been out in the forefront, and Chanley Painter has talked to the family attorney this morning. They're aware of it. They're going to be traveling down there. You've dealt with family members in crime situations and as crime victims. I can't imagine what they're going through and what they're about to go through, because they're nowhere near the end stages of the justice form part of this equation. What do they have ahead of them?
They have a lot of heartbreak and hard days and horrible times ahead of them. And yes, this particular father has been very outspoken, and I have dealt with victims of homicides, and it's a very delicate balance, because you obviously want to comfort them and validate what they're going through, but also this particular father, I wish I could have, or wish somebody would have in the beginning, if it was possible, and maybe somebody did, pull him aside and say, look, I know you're passionate, I know you want answers, I know you're out there advocating, but also let the police do what they're supposed to be doing, and any information that the police give you, please don't put out there, because that can hinder the case. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to criticize the father. He's in an impossible position, I couldn't imagine, but I would like just to see him restrained a little bit so that it could be a little bit more helpful to the prosecution's case. But they're in for a lot of heartbreak and hard days, and I can't imagine having to sit there in the courtroom. I have 5 kids, from 21 down all the way to 8, and I couldn't possibly imagine what they're getting ready to go through.
Yeah, to lose a daughter would be horrible. Kohberger, when he made his appearance in Pennsylvania, he looked all around the courtroom, and he found his parents, and he was, making when he was in Idaho, he had 2 appearances in January, he was looking straight ahead, didn't look back. Gonzalez was back there, wanting to connect, make eye contact. Let's play a little bit from that status hearing back in January, where Kohberger finds out the charges against him.
It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder, in violation of Idaho Code 18-1401 and 1403. The maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is not less than 1 year in prison, no more than 10 years in prison, and or a $50,000 fine or both. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 2 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogen, from which she died.
I was a part of that hearing back in January, and you noticed that when you had a shot of Kohberger, he was looking straight ahead, wanted nothing to do with the gallery. Jessie Law is joining our conversation. She's a defense attorney in Atlanta, Georgia. Jessie, good afternoon to you. Your reaction to the state's decision to go grand jury route and avoid the preliminary hearing, which of course we were all looking forward to, because we were going to get a real feel for the state's case and the evidence against Bryan Kohberger. We have that we have that preliminary charging document, which gave us a lot, that probable cause affidavit, but this was going to be sort of a first run. Why go grand jury and avoid the prelim, you think?
The prelim, you're going to have a hearing and dispute. You're going to have the defense and the prosecution go at it to challenge every scintilla of evidence to undermine the probable cause in this case. Our guest previously talked about the rigors that the victims and the victim's family have to go through for a preliminary hearing, and they will be brutalized during a preliminary hearing because they're going to go through each and every piece of evidence. I think the grand jury route was a much easier route to take for the state because there are multiple offenses, and get the grand jury to review it without having the bickering from the defense, and also not having to put the victims and their families through the ringer of having to hear the evidence all over again, and then having the defense trying to mitigate the state's case and trying to say it's impossible. I think the victims that my client could never have done that to the victims, and maybe even try to put the victims in bad light to say somebody else could have done it. I mean, why put them through it? So the grand jury process, a lot easier and a lot more efficient, and a lot more pacifying for the victims.
Yeah, we did see a bit of that already, Melissa, with the defense filing that notice that they wanted the fourth roommate to appear at the prelim. They, had a subpoena out, and then eventually the parties agreed that they would both depose that individual, and she wouldn't have to come. But in that motion, they basically articulated that they believed that fourth roommate had exculpatory evidence helping Bryan Kohberger. And we are all trying to figure out what that. It's probably literally a witness statement that maybe I thought I heard voices or some little thing that they are trying to exploit. But to Jesse's point, and Melissa, you could talk on this with your law enforcement background. She could have said anything, right? And in multiple interviews during that period of time, they were looking for the individual responsible, and the defense is gonna jump all over any inconsistencies.
Absolutely. And this is frequent and common. And look, police officers have a very hard job to do, especially homicide detectives when they're interviewing suspects. But as we know, just like the media does or other people do, there could be one little snippet that is said and taken out of context and then put into a different light and brought in there as you said, exculpatory evidence. And whatever it is, I'm sure it will be explained away. I don't know what it possibly could be, but I do not believe for 1 minute that roommate had anything to do or was involved in any way whatsoever. But whatever that quote-unquote exculpatory evidence is, I'm sure will be explained away and is probably really nothing in the grand scheme of everything else that they have.
Right, but they could jump on it. And to Jesse's point, everyone will be watching this preliminary hearing, so now they avoid it. They don't have to have it come out at this juncture. Let's remind everybody about some of the items seized from Kohberger's parents' home in Pennsylvania. 3 knives, numerous items of dark-colored clothing, including dark clothing in a laundry basket, black face masks, gloves, a knit hat, and black pants, multiple pairs of boots, criminology, psychology book, seats and seat cushions, headrests, brake and gas pedals, floor mats. This is from the car, obviously. Door panel, seat belt, visor. We haven't heard much from, in terms of the return on the search warrants, but all these things were tested, Jesse, and from what we know, there is a mini mountain of evidence against Kohberger. If there's anything more that they have been able to mine from these search warrants at Kohberger's home in Washington and then also in Pennsylvania, I mean, this seems like, from the outside, a pretty solid case. Is that going too far, Jesse?
I think they have a relatively good case. I wouldn't classify it as a solid case. And looking at that litany of items, I think some of my former clients could be murder suspects because it seems like pretty standard stuff in a car. So,
Well, yeah, but if you've got one of those 4 victims' DNA on your brake pedal, or then it's game over.
And they say it could be explained away. I don't know what his relationship was that he could possibly put down how that person's DNA could end up in the pedal. But glasses, visors, seat cushions, so forth. The knives. Some people do carry knives in their car. Some people carry guns in their car, but that doesn't make them a murder suspect. But they have relatively good. Wireless communication, their placement of the cell phone towers to place him at the scene and so forth. But just that litany of items alone doesn't really, raise any alarm bells in my head about him. But they have a case, but but given the number of documents they're going to go through, and keeping in mind that even if there's exculpatory evidence like we've been hinting about, the state is required to disclose that. So even though they've got the grand jury indictments, they're still required to disclose that.
Yes, they are, and they apparently have already dropped off a few truckloads of discovery for the defense to mull over. But again, the breaking news at this hour is that there will be no June preliminary hearing. Rather, Bryan Kohberger will be appearing in an Idaho court on Monday morning, noon Eastern time, 9 o'clock local Pacific time in Idaho. And at that point, we are expecting he'll be indicted on the murders of the 4 college students. and then it will be on to trial. Likely they'll set a trial date, likely into some point next year, and then away we go. But the breaking news, no preliminary hearing in June. Kohberger will be in court along with the family, at least of the Gonzalez family, but I'm sure other family members will be there as well, and will be there and watch it together right here on Court TV.